Picture this. You are standing in a forest. Not just any forest. A forest so dense that sunlight has forgotten what the ground looks like. The trees press together like a wall of ancient bone, their roots curling over each other like fingers locked in prayer. The air is cold and wet and smells of rot and pine. Somewhere ahead of you, the path narrows. Behind you, the path is already gone. You are a Roman legionary. You have been marching for 3 days through Germanic territory that your commanders swore was pacified. Friendly, even. You are carrying 60 pounds of equipment. Your sandals are soaked through. The man in front of you has not spoken in hours. The man behind you keeps looking into the trees. You tell yourself there is nothing out there. You tell yourself the Germanic auxiliary leading you through this forest is trustworthy. You tell yourself Rome does not lose, and then the first arrow falls out of the sky. Not from in front of you, not from behind you, from the side, from the trees themselves. And before the sound of the impact even reaches your ears, the screaming has already started. You turn, and the man beside you is on the ground. You turn again, and there are shadows moving between the trunks, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, and they are not stopping, they are not waiting, they are coming for you right now. And here is the thing that will break you before any blade does. There is nowhere to go. The forest is the trap. You are already inside it. You were already dead before you took your first step this morning. This is the Battle of Teutoburg Forest. This is the day 3 Roman legions ceased to exist. This is the ambush that changed the shape of the Western world. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how one man destroyed the greatest military machine in human history, using nothing more than patience, betrayal, and a forest. You will understand how 20,000 Roman soldiers were hunted down and slaughtered across 3 days of hell in the trees. And you will understand why the Roman emperor screamed a name into the walls of his palace. The name of a man he had trusted completely. If you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It genuinely helps keep stories like this alive. To understand Teutoburg, you have to understand what Rome believed about itself in the year 9 CE. Rome did not think of itself as an empire. Rome thought of itself as the natural order of things. The idea that any people could resist Rome long enough to actually defeat her was not just unlikely. It was, in the Roman mind, philosophically impossible. Barbarians could raid. Barbarians could skirmish. But barbarians could not win. Not against the legions. The legions were the most sophisticated military organization the ancient world had ever produced. Every soldier moved in formation, trained to an identical standard, armed with weapons engineered over centuries of warfare. The gladius was not designed for dueling. It was designed for formation fighting, for killing the man directly in front of you while your shield protected the man to your left. The pilum bent on impact so it could not be thrown back. Even their equipment was designed to think ahead. Rome did not fight battles. Rome executed them. The man charged with pacifying the Germanic territories east of the Rhine was Publius Quinctilius Varus, not a general in the mold of Caesar. An administrator, a governor, a man who understood law and order, who had served in Syria and done it well. Augustus trusted him. The Senate respected him. And Varus, critically, trusted everyone he should not have. One of the Germanic men brought into Roman service was Arminius. Born around 18 BCE into the Cherushi tribe, he had been given a Roman education, trained in Roman cavalry tactics, granted Roman citizenship, and raised to the rank of equestrian. By every measure Rome had, Arminius was a success story, a barbarian made useful. And he had used every year of that education to learn exactly one thing: how to destroy Rome. By 9 CE, he had spent years quietly building a coalition among the Germanic tribes. Not openly. Open resistance would be crushed. Quietly, patiently, convincing men who hated each other to cooperate long enough to do one specific thing, all the while remaining at Varus's side. Trusted, respected, given access to Roman troop movements and supply lines, a man tried to warn Varus. Segestes, a Germanic chieftain and the father-in-law of Arminius himself, told Varus directly that a betrayal was coming. He asked Varus to arrest Arminius before the march. Varus dismissed it as the jealousy of a rival. It was the last mistake he would make in daylight. Arminius knew Roman legions in open terrain were nearly unbeatable. He also knew that in dense forest everything changed. Formations broke. The testudo became impossible. Cavalry could not maneuver. Rome's advantages vanished one by one. What remained was just frightened men trying to see through the trees. He chose his ground with the precision of a man who had studied Roman military manuals. The Teutoburg Forest, forested hills and marshland in what is now northern Germany, was terrain he knew in his bones. He had walked every narrow defile, every bottleneck, every point where the path squeezed between a hillside and an impassable swamp. He had decided, years before this moment, that this was where Rome would die. In September of 9th CE, Arminius came to Varus with intelligence. A small uprising in a nearby village. Nothing serious, quick to handle. Varus should take his forces through the Teutoburg Forest. The route was faster. The situation was not dangerous. Varus believed him. 3 full Roman legions began moving into the forest. The 17th, 18th, and 19th. 3 cavalry squadrons, 6 auxiliary cohorts, between 15 and 20,000 fighting men, plus the baggage train, servants, and camp followers. Some estimates put the total at 36,000 people, stretching for miles through narrow forest paths. A massive living column of Roman power pushing deeper into the dark. Arminius rode with them for a while. Then he excused himself. He had to go ahead to coordinate with allied forces. Varus nodded. Arminius rode directly to his warriors, who were already in position. Tens of thousands of Germanic fighters were hidden in those trees. They had prepared field fortifications using techniques Arminius had learned from Rome. Turf walls and ditches parallel to the path, firing positions cut into the hillsides. They had waited in the cold and the wet for days. They were ready. The Romans marched. Day 1 passed into evening. On the second day, the weather broke. Rain came in sheets. The path turned to mud. The column slowed, compressed, tangled on itself. Visibility dropped. The trees closed in. And in those trees, thousands of men waited for the signal. Then it came. They advance. From both sides of the column, simultaneously, Germanic warriors erupted from the trees. Not in formation, in a screaming tide, closing the gap before the Romans could organize. Javelins flew. Arrows followed. The lead elements lurched forward. The rear staggered back. The middle had nowhere to go. Roman soldiers trained to fight in formation suddenly had no space to form. The trees were too close. The path too narrow. Men raised shields and found they could not link them because the man next to them was already down. Officers screamed orders into the chaos. Centurions forced discipline through sheer physical will. And for a time it worked. Trained Roman soldiers, even in these conditions, pushed back. They killed. They survived the first assault. But survival was not victory. The Germanic warriors melted back into the trees. The Romans could not pursue. The forest swallowed the attackers the moment they stepped off the path. The column had to keep moving. Standing still in the Teutoburg was dying slowly. Moving was dying on someone else's schedule, but there was still a chance of breaking through to open ground. The officers held a council. Burn the heavy baggage. Move faster. Get out of the forest. The column stripped to fighting capacity, and what could not come was set alight. The smoke rose above the trees in dark pillars, and Arminius let them march. He followed. He harassed. He kept his warriors fresh while the Romans exhausted themselves across the miles. Every time they paused, arrows came from the trees. Every time they slowed, a probing attack tested the flank. You cannot fight what you cannot see. You can only walk forward and wait for the next blow. The left flank was naked. Cavalry had scattered in the initial assault, unable to maneuver through the trees. The center was holding, barely. Men who had marched in cold rain carrying 60 pounds, who had slept in half-built camps, who had watched friends die from invisible weapons, reaching the edge of what a human body sustains. The rear was worse. Arminius had deployed his heaviest forces there, knowing the rear elements would be most disorganized, furthest from command, first to crack. Night fell on the second day. Officers counted the losses in silence. The numbers were bad. They were not breaking through. They were being consumed hour by hour. Varus decided on the third morning. Push hard and fast for open ground. Throw everything at the breakthrough. Either escape or end it. It was the right decision. It was already too late. Arminius had positioned his largest concentration of warriors at the single most lethal point on the route, where the path ran between a steep hillside on the left and an impassable marsh on the right. This was not an ambush position he had found. This was a killing ground he had engineered. His warriors had spent days building a long earthen wall along the hillside, with firing positions carved into it at intervals. When the Roman column reached this point, they would walk into a... When the Roman column reached this point, they would walk into a funnel. High ground above, swamp below, warriors behind, a wall of death ahead. The Romans hit the wall in the early morning of the third day. The column compressed violently. Officers pushed forward, more weight from behind. Germanic warriors on the earthen fortifications above hurled javelins down at point-blank range into the packed mass below. The Romans raised shields, the trained response, but the angle was wrong. Javelins from above. Shields designed for horizontal combat could not cover a man from above without leaving him blind. And the moment shields went up and visibility went down, the warriors on both flanks closed in. The line bends. The line bends further. The line breaks. Not a single catastrophic moment, a cascade. One section fragmented under unbearable pressure, and the soldiers beside them saw it, and their own discipline cracked along the same fault. The cracks spread like ice giving way. Centurions threw men bodily back into position, but 3 days of fear, exhaustion, and the crushing psychological weight of an enemy that was everywhere and nowhere had finally broken through. Roman soldiers began to run. Not all of them. Not most of them. But enough. When Roman legions broke, they ceased to exist as a military force. A Roman soldier in formation was 10 times more dangerous than a Roman soldier alone. A Roman soldier running through the trees of the Teutoburg was prey. The slaughter was methodical. Germanic warriors knew this forest. The Romans did not. Men who broke were hunted through the trees for miles. Small groups that held together and fought back were surrounded and ground down from every direction. The screaming and the sound of iron echoed through the forest, and then one by one, each sound stopped. Varus understood with absolute clarity that this was not a lost battle. It was over. 3 eagles. 20,000 men. Gone. He also understood what happened to Roman commanders taken alive by Germanic tribes. The ritual humiliation. The years in chains. The end that came not quickly but publicly. Publius Quinctilius Varus fell on his own sword. His senior officers made the same choice, one by one, falling on their blades with the discipline of men who had served Rome their entire lives and would serve her with their deaths. The soldiers who remained fought on. Some tried to break for the trees and were hunted individually. Some formed small groups and held for hours before being overwhelmed. Many taken alive were brought to sacred groves and sacrificed to the Germanic gods. The 3 eagle standards of the 3 legions were captured. A legion's eagle was not a flag. It was the soul of the unit. 3 captured in a single afternoon. When news reached Augustus in Rome, the emperor reportedly refused to cut his hair for months in mourning. The historian Suetonius records that Augustus would bang his head against the walls of his palace and cry out, "Varus, give me back my legions." He never got them back. The numbers 17, 18, and 19 were permanently struck from the Roman army's rolls. Rome simply refused to speak them again. The strategic consequences were permanent. Augustus had planned to push the Roman frontier from the Rhine to the Elbe, incorporating all of modern Germany into the empire. After Teutoburg, he abandoned that ambition forever. The Rhine became the permanent eastern boundary of Roman Europe. The territories beyond it remained outside Roman civilization permanently. Consider what that means. No conquest of the Germanic tribes means no Germanic Europe absorbed into Rome. The Germanic peoples remain distinct. Their languages, their cultures, their identities intact. The kingdoms that eventually became France, England, and the Holy Roman Empire all trace some thread back to 3 days in a forest in September of the year 9 CE. 1 ambush. 3 days. 20,000 men. And the map of the Western world changed permanently. Forever. Arminius did not win because he had more men. He did not win because he had better weapons. He won because he understood something Varus never grasped. Rome's greatest advantage was not the gladius or the formation. It was certainty, the unshakable belief that Rome always won. That certainty was the real armor. And the only way to destroy it was to choose terrain where certainty had no footing. He did not beat the Roman army. He beat the idea of the Roman army. But this story does not end in the forest. What comes next? What Rome sends back into those trees? What the general Germanicus does when a new emperor gives him orders that will shake the Germanic world begins with a march toward the Rhine. A Roman general standing at the edge of the Rhine, looking east into the same darkness that swallowed 3 legions, and giving the order to advance anyway. Watch what happens next, because what Rome does to avenge the Teutoburg Forest will change everything.